right. So obviously this is the meeting where we are going through the agenda, and it's an extra meeting this month, so thanks everyone for coming. We want to, I think I was asking Doug as well earlier, just while we were all logging in, to maybe we can touch on our policy, the question that was asked, that I asked relative to our pay policy for people when they're out on the quarantine restriction. And I think it might have to do with sick policy, but I want everyone to hear the answer. So Doug, do you want to take us through the agenda?
Sure, we'll go through the agenda. So there's no public hearings on this agenda, so I'm just going to skip right through the first page and get right into the resolutions unless somebody has any questions about anything there. The first resolution being acceptance of the monthly financial reports. Kate has attached those to the agenda. Everybody should have your attachments and stuff, but I've got, we can answer questions as we go through it. All right. So jumping right into our first non-standard resolution here, 2016.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So yeah, just hiding behind Gary. So the first one here is a budget transfer resolution. This pertains to the assessor personnel line. So this reduces contingency by $9,100 and increases the assessor personnel line by $9,100. This pertains specifically to our former assessor. When our former assessor left, we had to buy out vacation. And so his vacation buyout was paid out of the assessor personnel line. So this basically puts the remaining amount of money back into that line to cover the new assessor's salary for the rest of the year, to make sure that we don't run out of money in that line.
Did we just make the payment, or we made it before and now we're starting to run out of money?
The second.
Yeah.
All right. I was gonna say, wow.
No, that was made back in March, but we just
Okay.
started getting down and we're like, oh, we're not gonna have enough for
And
this
that,
line.
this is why.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is, and we're going to need to, you know, we're too far along really for the 2020 budget, but for 2021, now we've adopted the budget at some point here, hopefully first quarter of 21, we can do a budget adjustment. Technically, these vacation buyouts and everything, these are benefits. So these really should be paid out of an 800 line. So we need to go back and fix that and clean this up. I see Kate shaking her head. She's working with me a lot on all this finance stuff. But so we'll come back and we'll correct that. But technically, a vacation buyout like that should be paid out of an 800 line, not out of a personnel line. But our auditors have not said anything about that. But it's really from an accounting standpoint.
Does all of our vacation pay go towards benefits in the benefits category or not? Like say I'm an employee, I take 2 weeks of vacation. Where does it show up? In wages.
Yeah.
Then you're treating this one differently.
Yeah, because it's a buyout. It's a buyout. It's
Oh,
a
okay.
benefit when they leave.
It's not their normal,
It's not their.
Okay.
it's an addition, and whatever he had in his take them off.
It's a compensated absence.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, next one, dental, Sam.
Yeah, so we got the plan cost and there's no change.
Can you
in
guys
the-
on Zoom here, Sam? Okay. Okay.
Okay, there's no change in the premium, so it would cost them, if we keep the same 25% of employees paying the premium, it'd be the same for employees and it's the same for the town. So this is just asking you guys to continue with the current plan.
Great.
Okay, any questions? Moving on. Next one is we talked about this at the last town board meeting. This is the actual resolution to authorize the $7,500 for the 100-hour block that you approved by motion at the last town board meeting, as well as an additional $7,500 for an additional 100 hours, and doing the budget adjustments
For both.
for both.
How'd you make out with that?
I'm sorry, say again.
How'd you make out with that?
Almost done.
Kathy?
We're about done. We're about.
We're about 99%.
There's little things that keep popping up.
Little things, yep, but I did get the final service order from Integrated, and they spent just over amongst 4 different people, $137 to close that line. So
That just doesn't seem bad for everything that was done.
It's a lot cheaper than 1.2 million.
Oh my gosh, sure beats 1.2 million.
Just so you know too, just so everybody knows, and for officially, I did have a conversation with the sheriff investigator who is investigating the hack this morning. They are trying to attempt to trace back the IP address that was used, but it's unknown whether or not they'll have any luck or anything, but they're going through the process to try to follow it as far as they can. And then they are, I don't know how to explain it other than I'm gonna say referring it up the chain, but there's all kinds of steps and stuff that they have to follow and it going to higher levels, higher authorities, police, and Homeland Security, and then the federal government, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyway. Any questions on any of that? Anybody? No? Okay. Next one, authorization for town clerk to surplus items with the accordance with the fixed asset inventory management policy. You want to, Jean? These are-
These are just extra computers and monitors that, like the resolution notes that they've reached their useful life, monitors that no longer work, those kinds of things. So it's just kind of helping us clean out and get rid of things that aren't usable anymore.
So where did they go?
Like the computers, the hard drives are taken out.
Right.
And they go over to the, not the hard drives, but the computers themselves go over to the transfer station.
Jean,
It's recycling.
Yep.
Jean, when you speak, can you just turn a little bit more?
Oh,
So
sure,
that-
absolutely.
Having trouble hearing
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
They're all the electronics recycling. Except for-
Except for the hard drives. Yep.
Okay, any questions on that one? No? Okay. Next one, Jim, this is reimbursement for incorrect water bills. Do you want to?
So back in 2011, 12, and 13, we were updating our water meters and an incorrect head that was on the meter was installed. It should have been a model 25, not a model 70. When we came back to update their meter recently, we discovered they had the wrong meter head on their meter, so they've been overpaying for water for 5-6 years, so we're reimbursing them to them.
They never complained at all of
Nothing.
You don't have an idea, like, especially if you come from another place, water is really expensive some places, so you might think your bill is reasonable and never look at how much you use. You know?
yeah, it's just that they reportedly used 1.5 million gallons of water.
It's a lot of baths.
I do have a family of 5 or 6, so maybe they thought it was.
Well, they're
normal.
teenagers, you know.
Yeah, so, but that's what's going on in that resolution.
Jim, I know I had asked you, so this, I think it's the second one that we've done this year, but we really have no way of knowing
So what,
how many there are.
we don't know if there are
Others.
others, so what Caitlin and I have done is, we're gonna go back to 2013 in this time frame that they seem to be both in September of 13. See who was replaced and then send a letter out to get out to see, get in their house to see if it's the correct one or incorrect.
Well, is it also possible just to look at the really high usage folks and see if any of them were replaced during that time?
Could, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a good indication, like there could be a high usage on 15 with the right meter head.
Right, yeah.
So we're gonna go back, 13 seems to be when we were changing out the
Those,
meter head, seems to be a time when there was
where
an
there
issue.
are a couple issues.
Actually, would you mind if we deviate from the agenda just for a quick second? So let's, since we're talking about water anyway, we've got the whole board, let's just talk about water real quick. You're in my conversation this morning.
Okay,
And
So-
then it's not on the agenda, you guys, but just want to talk to you about it.
yep, so I should have had a resolution for this board meeting, but I forgot. And that we're going to waive collecting fees or, I'm sorry, not fees.
Late fees.
The penalty.
The penalty to be re-levied. So at the board meeting, we'll bring it up and have you verbally say, yes, we're not going to re-levy, and then we'll do it at the November meeting.
This is pertaining to, we talked a little bit about this, I think at the last town board meeting, but this is the whole COVID thing. Now, Supervisor Inglesby has just forwarded to us a bunch of documents that they have created, their town attorney has created relative to this whole thing. And so we might be able to use something
That they created.
That they created.
Yeah.
associated with all of that. too, because there's notices that have to go out. I mean, what were you telling me? The notices have to be approved? The notice has to be approved?
Whatever before we can submit our information to our water rights, has to go to the Public Service Commission to be approved to go out to the residents after you, so they want to approve it, you gotta approve it, and it goes out to the residents. They want to make sure the language is correct,
Where are we with drafting that letter?
or even better now that we have
Yeah.
Almost done.
We've changed a couple words and,
These are replaced.
So now we're saving money too, so I think we'll have to go to that,
So is the first step going to the town board or to the other?
to the department, up to the, yeah, that'll come to the town board.
so at this point, I mean, let's face it, by this point, right, that'll probably be the November. You know, the November, was it 19? Does anybody know? 16.
Yeah, next Friday's our deadline for
Is it really?
that.
Yeah.
We
That's-
just finished an agenda.
That's what it was like when we had 2 meetings a month.
Yeah.
No.
Can you imagine when,
Oh, my goodness. All right, resolution 221, request for New York State DOT to conduct a speed study.
We received over the summer a email concern from, the way I'm reading it is a resident from the city of Canandaigua. As she uses Outhouse Park and she sees pedestrians crossing over Buffalo Street Extension, going over to the park from out Old Brookside. So she's requested that the town somehow maybe try to reduce the speed limit in that area. So that's what that is pertaining to.
Asking DOT to.
Yeah, to do
has the DOT ever said that they were gonna reduce something that we, oh, they have,
Once.
okay, because it seems like
Not
we're on a
Not
long
very often.
string of, we're on a long
Once.
string of them ignoring our
Maybe
requests.
5%?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
not very often.
yeah,
Yeah,
it feels like we keep throwing, the ball and it never comes back.
But this has also come up, Sam, right, with the Parks and Rec Committee. They
Yeah.
talked about this also,
Yeah.
and they were, I think, gonna have some
Concerned
additional
about it.
conversations and stuff too,
Yeah.
so.
is,
We've gotten a couple, I feel like.
is there anything from the Park and Rec Committee that we could include with that TE9
Maybe ask her
request?
tomorrow night. They meet tomorrow night.
Yeah.
They might be able to provide something tomorrow night. Right, it is tomorrow night.
Yeah, now are you looking for something like from the committee that's requesting the study? Is that what?
Or the committee saying that they're in support of it because of the safety of our parks.
Something, yeah.
Something with a little weight to
I
it.
think
Maybe
so.
even a letter from the chairman or something.
Okay, yeah.
All right, resolution 222, approval of engineer's report for Kramer Road water extension. This is the MRB proposal. So you take this, but there were 2 steps. Remember the last town board meeting? Because I know we got confused when we were originally working on this agenda before the computer hack. There were actually supposed to be 2 resolutions. You did one at the last meeting, which set the public hearing for the Kramer Road, the official legalese stuff that we have to do for the November town board meeting. Right. And then this is separately the proposal for the engineering. Right? Correct.
And we're gonna do the public hearing November 16th at 5 o'clock. So an hour before our board meeting, they don't want to show up, we'll do it then.
Is that what that resolution says?
Yeah, for those of you who couldn't hear Jean, because she was kind of like not moving her lips, she said, is that what the resolution says, 5 o'clock? So
So the
we're-
town board hereby orders a public hearing shall be held November 16th, 2020 at 6 PM at the town of Canandaigua Town Hall.
Oh,
6 o'clock.
so it's during the town board
Yeah.
meeting.
And I think it has to be because of, Chris Navra wrote it. I know originally you guys were talking about like a work session. to
Yeah.
We
talk
were, there was a little,
Right.
somebody has a constant issues with the soccer kids at night.
What was that sure you guys talking about?
That was on the last.
It was the
one.
last, it was resolution 213. the
It's not
last
in this.
meeting.
Oh, I was.
I know you guys were talking about like a public information meeting.
Right.
Is
Right.
that what you guys were
We're talking
talking
about
about?
public information.
Are you gonna be doing that at 5 o'clock too?
We'll do it 5 o'clock on the 16th.
I mean, we can always record the meeting, but I mean, we will be recording by Zoom too at 6 and then they can.
I just thought we just leave it away from the town board meeting, get that out of the way and done,
If anyone comes,
if anyone comes.
Really?
There's
Right.
5
it's
residents.
5 houses, so even if they all come, they're not gonna delay our meeting.
No. We'll have about 45 minutes to kill.
We're
Yeah,
gonna mail
oh,
out.
we did it at time, yeah, I see what you're saying. Alright.
If you want to.
For your public informational meeting, you guys are talking.
We'll talk.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Resolution 223, setting a public hearing on text code amendment. This is off-street parking. Gary, I don't know, do you know, this is the ordinance committee's been working on this. for a
Yeah,
while.
we've been working on this for quite a period of time. What we did on it, the committee, the directors committee, we decided that some of these items would leave up to the planning board to make the decisions instead of, getting it on the books as a code and all of a sudden changes needed to be made. We'd have to bring it back. So we're giving
you're
the planning
simplifying.
board more responsibility, which they really are set up to do. And they can work on based on each development or whatever.
And just so everybody's aware, this resolution doesn't adopt the law, it just sets the public hearing for November 16th. This next resolution, 220, any questions on that? I'm sorry. Okay, questions, anybody? No? Okay. Next resolution, 224, similarly is setting a public hearing on the draft natural resource inventory update in the local law update, and that's setting the public hearing for November 16th. Some of you are on the conservation subdivision team with me, and we're kind of working through some of the changes to that. The NRI comes up. This is, the NRI has been a long time, really our Environmental Conservation Board and a variety of our groups have been working on this for about 2 years now. They've spent a lot of time putting together this NRI. Do you have anything on the local law?
Not really, because like you said, they put it together and, they eventually followed it.
But then the conservation subdivision
Separate.
technicality is separate. Is that coming at some point? Because that's the one where we've had some real,
Yes.
seems like people using it
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't really benefit the town.
Yes, so yes, we're working, we kind of, I don't know, at the last meeting, I think you both were there with me. I think Kathy, I think you were with us by Zoom and stuff too. I mean, we kind of laid the groundwork for some of the framework and we've got to work through some of the technical aspects and how it would work. And then Labella is helping us by kind of putting together a local law that I think would be more in line with the direction that we want to go. I mean, we still have a lot of work to do. It's still a work in progress.
Okay.
So that's coming.
Question, at the September meeting, there was a resolution on the agenda regarding the NRI that was tabled indefinitely.
Right.
Was that the adoption of,
Yes,
okay, so,
that was killed off intentionally.
okay,
Yeah, and then this
this will
replaces.
replace that.
Right, sets a
Okay.
new public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we didn't have the local law, because there was also a local law that had to be updated
Okay.
associated with that, so. The next resolution sets a public hearing on text code amendment. This one relates to short-term rentals. This sets the public hearing just to draw everybody's attention to December 21st. Couple of reasons for that. We have a variety of public hearings at the November meeting. We also needed more time to refer this one out to the county planning board and some other groups where we wanted some additional comment on. This local law, do you want me to, it's a real basic local law that just the ordinance committee, and we've talked about it a couple times. It just basically is going to require registration only of short-term rentals. It doesn't get into a lot of the weeds with short-term rental stuff. Gary, is there more you'd like to add?
No, other than, we started this before the COVID appeared and we had, 2 different companies come before the ordinance committee to explain what they did because they're in this field. And so we've, relied on their information, things like that. We figured we'd take care of it basically in-house, like Doug said, with just registration, things like that.
And registration and a fee with registration?
Yeah.
Okay, right, I thought that, I remembered that, but I just
Do we
wanted
need
to.
to update the fee schedule in this case?
Yes. We'll do all that at the same time. Just so everybody, we've talked, I know a lot about this over the years, but we do get complaints about things going on, failing septic systems, a whole variety of different things. Most recent one we were talking about was, lady was advertising through one of the sites that you could come and shower outside, next to the lake, just like home, with short-term rental. Soap and all, and we wondered where the bubbles came from in the lake, so. Anyway, it's just a basic registration. So, any questions on that one?
Is that gonna be through the development office or the town clerk's office?
The fee would be through the
But the town,
collected,
but
but it would
the,
be a permit. that
it'll
would
be a
be-
permit.
We'll spell all that out.
Okay.
So, yeah. Next resolution, 226, says thanking Assemblyman Colton Senator Helming for their assistance with the Oneonta Park transfer legislation.
And are we thinking of doing something to celebrate that addition to our park, maybe in the summer, or are we thinking of a winter?
Yes.
Yes.
And the accompanying resolution, before I answer that question, would allow me to move forward with a whole series of documents and everything that we are going to need to do to actually do that. So the legislation allows us to apply to transfer the title, and then we have to go through the process and everything. I think it's gonna take a little bit of time. I have talked to the chair of our special events committee about helping organize something for that, to which she has readily said yes, she would love to help organize something nice for them. But realistically, at this point, we're getting into winter. It's gonna take some time to do the
Yeah,
title
summer
transfer.
sounds
Probably
better,
kick it out to nicer weather. We can have them back. And also the governor's office I've had a conversation directly with the governor's office. They are interested in, if we can schedule allows for it, to maybe come and do something also. So maybe we can coordinate something really nice, maybe to kick off the summer season next year or
Yeah,
something.
that'd be great.
So, yes. The one thing, just, we don't need to go through them all now unless somebody has a question.
Governor's office.
I put the bullet points specifically, you probably remember there was an email, and actually I had to go back and pull it up myself. There was an email I had sent to the whole town board after Sam and I had gone with meet with the DEC about specific points that were kind of the agreement points to do this whole transfer. I put it specifically in the resolution, so there was a record of those points. But if you guys have any questions on that, please let me know. But those were at the time, the agreed upon kind of concepts that we've continued to advance, that was the general direction that we were going. I haven't had any objection from anyone, so I'm assuming that that's all okay, but just let me know after you go through it.
I think it's okay. The one that I would love to understand a little bit more is about the boat launch. And this kind of says, the town will enter into a long-term memorandum of understanding with the DEC.
Yes.
To provide, but I'm not, when I read that, is the town providing it or the DEC providing it?
Yeah, so what the current, actually, it's in a couple things. It's in our current lease agreement with the DEC in the way that we operate on Oneonta Park, that the town of Canandaigua shall make available basically boat launching access between November 1st and April 15th, when the north end of the lake is frozen.
Right.
It's also spelled out in our town code, in the Parks and Rec section of town code. It's actually one of the things that I want to talk to the Parks and Rec committee about, updating that a little bit. The agreement, when we kind of laid this out with the DEC, is that maybe it could be available even when the north end isn't frozen, November 1st to April 15th.
Right, just to
During
be,
that,
not to have to worry about, is it frozen, is it not?
and then we always would have to go check and all that kind of stuff, and to help promote fishing. That's the big thing. The DEC fisheries unit was actually the unit that actually purchased the land that was Oneonta. And so they're all about promoting fishing, which we'll get to in a minute, another resolution. But that's a big component of this. And so that's why that's also spelled out.
But to have it accessible, does that mean we have any expenses associated with it? Or does DEC do any manning of it? It's just an open access?
It's just open. It's
Okay.
just open access. Yeah. And it's been that way. I mean, we opened the gate, November 1st down there, and people can go down there with their boat code.
Yeah, I just didn't want to get into something where we have an unintended expense that we didn't realize we were signing up for.
The other thing that we're gonna have to spell out, I was down to Ananda last, I think it was Wednesday for a meeting, and the DEC showed up, and it was really cool. The DEC showed up with 2 huge trucks to stock fish. They have the fisheries that,
Yeah, the
2
hatcheries.
huge trucks, and they were dumping them in the lake. And one of the things is the DEC still wants the ability to do that type of stuff and have an easement across the park so that they can still do all that, I mean, which is cool, but.
Yeah, very cool.
So, anyway. All right, any questions on that? Next resolution is also a park-related resolution. Authorization to enter into an option to purchase land for the purposes of a town park public access. This is, you know, I was wondering if, when I started writing this resolution, if this was going to be longer than the Skull Island resolution. But, because
There's a typo in the FAQs, just before I forget.
Thank you.
I'll show you this.
I was really trying to document in this resolution our planning documents over the years that have called for additional public access, so that there was a record of it kind of in one place. Many of our documents spell that out. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to take a look at the questions and answers. I put that together because I would think that we will get questions in some form or fashion. So that is attached to the agenda. I also emailed it out to you separately.
Can we put in the newsletter?
Sure. So my thought was actually after you guys take
The
action
resolution, right,
to
yeah,
do a
but-
press
the
release.
splash, yeah.
And then do a press release, and then we could put that in the newsletter along with the questions and that sort of thing. As well as the little map that shows the area, those sorts of things. I have continued to have conversations with Kevin Mulvaney, and we've been talking with the DEC. We did share with them some information on Friday. They are looking at it as a potential opportunity for some grant money associated with the source water protection. So I think that there might be an opportunity there for us to get some financial assistance with the acquisition of it. The question I know has come up a couple of times with me and people as I've had to have some conversations. Questions about traffic, also questions about what the town would be intending to use it for. That's why I tried to put that in the questions and answer section, just so that there was something kind of in writing so that we could easily share. You know, I think, first of all, especially with Sam sitting here in the room, if you told Sam that she had to find more lifeguards, I think she'll probably kill each and
us.
every one of you. So she,
That was my first, I was like, no, not this year.
Truthfully, with the marina so close to it, you know, maybe at some point in time in the future, the town wants to consider swimming, but I don't think that should be on the table for any time.
Oh
In
my
the
God,
near
the traffic,
future.
the boat traffic near there makes swimming really dangerous.
Right. But there's a lot of other nice things that would offer in terms of amenities, picnicking, as it's called out in the comprehensive plan, even a place to sit. The DEC wants to do something with us with fishing in exchange for the whole Ananda Park thing. So again, putting a nice fishing platform or floating dock or whatever there would be a great place for fishing at that location also. So it definitely has some benefits. Obviously, a lot of things to work through. Again, this doesn't commit us to purchase this in any way, shape, or form. This is just the option. And then if we choose to exercise the option, we would do that at a later meeting. I did put in a resolution just so that, you know, in case it came up or in case there were any concerns, that the town board is directing that if the town board were to take action on exercising the option, we would hold a public hearing. So that the public would
Yeah, I think that's good.
comment on that. So. Right. Any questions on that one? The next resolution, we talked about this briefly at your last meeting, setting the organizational meeting for January the 11th of 2021, and we'll try to put everything on that December agenda that needs to get done before that. That gives just a little greater space between the two meetings, especially over the holidays. People need to quarantine given the situation. Have some social distancing, etc. Any questions on that? Next resolution, standard workday.
Yeah, we created the position and never created the standard workday for the new position, so this is just for retirement reporting, yeah.
And then the last section here are the sureties and the stormwater control facilities, the block there. The first one, I'm sorry, it's not the first one. The resolution 232. The Valencia one. 34, thank you. Resolution 234 is technically the one you already authorized me to do, but now that we have all the documentation, I can actually put it together in an actual resolution, just for the record,
For the documentation.
put it in there, so. Okay. Any questions on?
The agenda. Thank you. So, can we come back to when people are,
Yes.
if somebody is an essential worker, but they have to be isolated because they've been exposed, do they take sick time? What do they do?
So, before we get to that,
Okay,
I know you want to get to that.
I don't want to
Just-
forget.
Right, right,
Half the
right.
time I walk out of
I
here.
wrote two things. Let's come
Okay.
back to that.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
longer
thank
conversation.
Okay.
Audit, just give you a quick update on the audit. Kate has been spending a lot of time with the auditors. Have they moved into your office yet? They're getting pretty close, I think, right? Are you charging them lease space now? So they actually, the auditors emailed Kate and I a draft version of the audit last night. I have a bunch of questions before I send it out to you guys. I want to send some questions back to Randy Shepherd. The plan is to have the draft of the audit to you by Friday, this Friday. You will have the draft of the audit by email to you this Friday before the 1st. And then they will present at your November town board meeting. They will actually present
This is
the
the
actual-
final for last year.
for 2019.
Okay. When you said the audit, I thought we were planning for the next year, and then I realized
Well,
we're
we're
still,
doing that.
they're dragging us back.
We're doing that also, but to that regard, our town board meeting or our finance meeting where we normally
Right.
would review the agenda is the 2nd. And then the 3rd Thursday is actually after the town board meeting. Do you want to have another finance meeting next Thursday to review the audit? Kate says yes.
Well, I mean,
We have two things to review because we have the 2019 audit, but we also have the RFPs that we reached out to receive the RFPs for the new audit for next year. So we actually have two audit items, and whether you want to do them together or separate, we can decide.
So typically, when we have that finance meeting, we actually have the auditors at the meeting. So we would need to break it into two parts anyway, because certainly I can't see us discussing the RFP unless only one person applied, and it was the people who were there.
No, we had two responses.
We had two,
Two replies.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I feel like we should meet with the auditors just to get a good understanding of what their comments and thoughts are. So, and it isn't always really possible to have that kind of discussion at a town board meeting.
So November the 5th would be next Thursday, if you want to do that. Does that work? And I can certainly reach out to the auditors to see if they're available. We could do both of those things on the 5th, and then on the 12th would be the normal where we go through the agenda. Now, the agenda may be light for November at this point.
As we're
with us getting- Or maybe just do it all on the 12th. I don't know, but that's where we need to have a conversation.
Oh, the agenda is the 12th, right before the meeting, right? I would bet we could do it all together,
Okay.
even if we had just a little bit longer meeting rather than having to have something separate. But if you're worried about it, then you probably know more than we do.
No, I think my questions, are just like how they got to different things. But, one of the things, and I'll just tell you, one of the things that jumped right off the page at me, and I talked about Jim and Terry about this. Our capital assets, our fixed assets is going to be something that they're going to bring up associated with the audit. And I want clarification on this, but a big part of that is how we value roads. And so we've got to kind of work together, and that's got to be one of the things that we work through this winter and kind of get cleaned up so that when they do the 2020 audit, or whoever does the 2020 audit, I should say, that we've got all that properly accounted for in our fixed asset policy.
and they offer some template, but like, okay, what,
Yeah.
how do we value the road?
Let's,
I mean, what do they consider, how we got to that number?
let's get into that in a separate meeting, because that's got all kinds of tentacles. There's like standard things that say so much per mile, and then there's all kinds of other ways. So let's talk
They're
about that.
experts in it, so,
Yeah.
you know, the way I look at it is, if they think we're doing something, we're doing it for, I mean, really, we never had roads on the book until a couple of years ago, so anything they're telling us is probably more versed in that. I don't feel like, I wouldn't take any bird to it, it's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Do you think that's best?
It's what the current and ESBR, I think.
Yeah, Bonadeo and EFBR.
Okay. All right, I'm done talking about audit. Okay, back to your question.
Thank you.
Absences, COVID-related absences. So, it's a great question.
I'm just curious.
So, you know, as the question came up earlier, Linda had asked me about, you know, the COVID-related absences and kind of what we've been doing in terms of an operation from this standpoint. So I think that we've had 4, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but I think we've had 4
Exposures.
employees that have been exposed to positive cases. Is that?
Yeah, and I think there's different situations too, like either being exposed or someone who's sick and is going to get a COVID test, somebody who has been exposed to someone suspected of a pod, you know, so it's
Yeah.
like, there's so many different
Varieties.
that it's like,
And up until a recent exposure, most all of those employees have been able to work remotely. Do you think that's fair
Yeah.
to say? So they would, back to our previous conversation, they would probably fall under the non-essential category.
Right.
So they can work remotely, so they've been able to work remotely, or if they've been sick, they've actually used their sick time. So they have sick hours that they're actually able to use. In one particular case, one employee was not feeling well, had been exposed to a positive test case, was very concerned. We were concerned for the employee, and the employee felt like it was allergies, and it wasn't really. But was still, you know, I think took, if I remember correctly, took 1 or 2 days of sick leave and then felt well enough to work from home and work from home remotely, still fully
Yeah.
functioning, operating
Right.
and using their sick leave for the 2 days and then work the rest of the time remotely. We've had the other situation where you have an essential worker that at first we thought that, you know, the person was going to need to use sick leave. Now I've just recently, just hours ago, been informed that there might be a provision under CARES Act funding, and that they may not have to use their accrued sick leave, and we've got to look into that a little bit more. In the case of an employee who is essential, who tests positive, obviously they've got to quarantine. Exposure to a positive, that's where you start to get in a greater situation, and that's why we need the policy stuff that we started to talk about earlier today. Because in that situation, you know, there's guidelines that say the employee should is the word, quarantine for the 14 days, or if they're able to work, feeling well enough to work, but work in an isolated situation where they're, you know, and that's where you really, it starts to get into this whole gray area. So, you know, to answer your question, generally we've been relying on use of sick leave. And then we do have a sick policy in place that's in the employee handbook that says that if needed, other employees can donate. I know I'll use myself as an example. I just recently, used my 8 hours.
Yeah.
I donated 8 hours of sick leave to an employee that needed sick leave. So that provision has already been established by the town board. That's in the employee handbook.
and that actually gets used
That
quite a
doesn't
bit. It does, it's happened quite a few times since it's been put in place.
Right. So does that kind of sort of answer your question?
So are
I
we,
think we have to, because you sent it to me too, I think we have to read that CARES Act and see
Yeah.
when we can get federal funding for people who have to quarantine or,
And it's something we've got to do some more research.
but
And then-
anyone who has stayed home right now because of a COVID test or exposure has used their own sick time.
Right.
So,
And then my question becomes then, take that a step further, is if there's funding available for that, then we may have to go back and look at maybe recrediting those employees the sick time that was used.
Correct.
And then, so we've got to look into it more. We've
Okay.
got to dig into it more.
Yeah, I just could imagine a situation where I'm an employee and I'm staying home for the benefit of the greater good, but I don't want to use my sick time. You know what I mean? I feel like there could be somebody who might feel that way and say, why do I have to use my sick time? I'm doing this to benefit others, not to benefit me. And so I just wanted to say, we should have a standard policy that we follow so that we don't get into a situation where we're treating people differently.
Right, oh, absolutely, we gotta treat everybody the same, and I feel like we've tried very hard to treat everybody the same, which is
Yeah.
why we've actually, sent some people home, because we previously have sent people home, and if they're able to work remotely, work remotely. That's why we've got to spell all that out.
Yeah, and I was also looking at it from like, what could go wrong in this situation? We could have people who are very careful, show up every day, whatever. And then we could have people who are constantly exposing themselves, and then we've got a problem where they don't have sick leave, they don't have anything left, you know what I mean? So I was just trying to think of all the things that could go wrong.
Well, and I also worry about it in reverse, Linda, that hypothetically pretend somebody doesn't have sick leave or very
And then they
limited
come
sick
to
leave.
work
come
and
to
they
work
make
because
everyone
they don't,
sick.
And
I
then
know.
they infect everybody.
And there's so many twists to this
Right,
that you could have go wacky,
Right.
that was why my mind was spinning on it.
right.
And I
Hey,
wanted to-
hey, Doug, can I share? I reached out to some people and I was sent this yesterday. I want to see if I can share my screen if you guys can see it. Oh, no, because you disabled me.
Hey, wait.
Doug has to do something to let.
Multiple, let's see, try that.
Yep, all right. I just need to share the right one, because if I share the wrong screen, it comes across really weird for you guys.
I got people on shared screen.
All right, is that up there yet?
No,
No.
Oh, I need to click share. Okay, so this is what I was sent. I don't know if I can email this to you,
Sure.
but this is similar to what we were talking about where the employee is subject to a mandatory or precautionary order of quarantine. That kind of goes along with what Linda was talking about, I would think. Not necessarily an order, but precautionary quarantine, and then they get that 14 days. It also has information about the amount of pay for the Leave Act. I don't know that it completely spells out exactly how we get reimbursed for that.
Right. Yeah, if you can send that to us, Jared, we'll email it out to everybody so everybody has it. And
Yeah, and then they can take a look. I mean, it might be something to build off of and build our
Right,
policy from.
that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we have to be consistent on when someone is, because the Department of Health, Public Health rather, says when someone must be quarantined. Like when I had possible exposure, I was waiting to hear from them to see whether I would have to be quarantined. But that in that waiting period, I would have chosen not to go to work because I didn't know whether I had contact. So there's a lot of things to consider. What legally is quarantined, and whether we want to allow people in that waiting period to have paid sick leave, which I would think would, but so like Mary Beard would, declare someone in quarantine if they have the known contact, but again, that changes every day. What is a known contact? So complicated, as we all know.
So we also.
I mean, like my son Thursday woke up with a stomach ache and a sore throat. So we had to check that box. School called. He had to get a COVID test. Negative, but still that was like 3 days of school off of that. I wonder if we would have the ability to declare the board, or somebody would have the ability to declare somebody quarantined for our purposes.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, that goes back to obviously the other conversation that we were having. The other thing that's happened, to Kathy's point that she was making about the mandatory quarantine protocols like that Mary Beer would get involved with. We've had 2 employees now, one part-time, 1 full-time employee that traveled to a quarantine state. And then therefore had to quarantine. No, I said part-time and full-time. And then I'll talk about me in a second. So we had those 2 employees who had to quarantine, and those employees would be what we refer to as essential employees. Now, the one employee, we were able to isolate a little bit and allow them, right, the one part-time, or was she out for 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
It was
yeah.
out the whole 2 weeks, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't say she, he or she. We had another employee who was actually out the whole 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, and you,
You're sick leave, right, you're sick leave for that 2 weeks, but that was a mandatory quarantine situation. And again, there was also, because they traveled their own decision to travel to a known quarantine state. That's why we said, okay, you're gonna have to use your sick
Yeah.
time.
That's what I was gonna say. It depends on whether the travel is for work or pleasure or,
And then in my situation, yes, I also traveled. Now, in my particular situation, they asked me to be careful, was what it was, because we were traveling back from a state. We traveled, this is fun. The day that we left Delaware was the day that they put it on the list, but it didn't go into effect until midnight the next morning.
So you were on
12:01 a.m.
technicality.
So I was on a technicality that didn't technically have to quarantine. And I got a call from their contract tracing in from Cali about all that. And so it wasn't official quarantine, but still, I just worked remotely. So that goes back to, again, the whole earlier conversation, when we have the ability to work remotely, even the executive orders suggest that we still should work remotely as much as possible. So,
I know there are private industries, friend of mine, that if you decided to go on your own on vacation, to one of these locations, they would not give you paid sick leave, nor are they gonna pay you. That's on you. You have to take unpaid leave. So
it's,
I don't know if we would want to do that. I'm just letting you know that you want to encourage people to do the right thing, but all kinds of money implicated.
Right. There's so many variables. That's the issue with all of it. There's so many different variables.
Well, ultimately, when people use up their sick leave, they go to unpaid leave, don't they? I mean, or somebody volunteers to give them theirs, but so realistically, people are making a choice when they use it for, their vacation quarantine, that, hey, I'm gonna have it now. And my thought is, it's easy to say, oh my gosh, you've got a disease, I feel sorry for you, but let me give you my sick leave. But if you know that the person did it so they could go to Disneyland, you might not feel that way.
Well, so
Well, in the
our policy.
yeah, in
is
the
very-
policy, you have to meet like a serious health condition where your doctor takes
Okay,
you out of work and stuff, so I think this would be.
this wouldn't be that, so you wouldn't.
I don't believe we've had, I don't believe, to this point, have we had anybody donate sick leave relating to a COVID?
No,
Yeah,
no,
It was-
it's all been like, they've been taken out of work
Relative to
for something and all that, yeah. No, not anything COVID related,
now it may come up,
maybe.
it may come up, but we have to also explore this whole other thing, like the stuff that Jared's gonna send us and the stuff we just found out about. So,
All right, well, good discussion. We just need a consistent policy that doesn't provide incentive for bad behavior.
Well, right now, everyone uses sick time until we
Until we
figure
change
something
something else
else out, but that's kind of been done.
or unpaid. Or unpaid.
Oh, right, or unpaid, yeah.
Can we use vacation time?
Mhm.
Voting holidays.
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
All right, anything else that anyone has? So we decided then that we could do the auditors at our next one with the agenda, and maybe it'll just go a little bit long, but rather than have two different meetings.
Did you say the deadline is this coming Friday?
Kate said next Friday.
Next Friday
Yes.
for
Yeah.
resolutions.
Oh, yeah, it can't be this Friday.
Yeah, it's next.
Next Friday.
November 6th. And then when do we want to review the RFPs? Because I think it might have said that we would award it at the November meeting.
Oh, well, now we can do, well, I think if we start our meeting with the auditors and then excuse them to go through the agenda and then do the RFPs. How is that? Because we can do the review of the RFP during the agenda. They wouldn't necessarily stick around for that, and that way we can have a discussion.
Yeah.
But
It's
what do
not,
you want then on the agenda?
yeah, but we just do that like we've done. I mean, we could just put a blank line. We've done that plenty of times where
Yeah,
we've
then
reviewed
they
the
go ahead,
proposals and town board hereby blank
Yeah.
line, so that's.
And then we'll discuss it during our agenda review after we have the audit discussion and after they leave.
All right, sounds good.
Sound like a plan?
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody. Thank you. Thanks for taking all the time this morning. See ya.
It'd be strange to not be talking to you all afternoon after this morning. Bye-bye.
So,